Subject English, Standard 9th, presented by Jemima Jebraj. The Fall of Troy, Part 1. As you can see, these are a few Bollywood movies based on history of great battles fought by great kings. I want you to remember the stories of these movies because we are going to learn about another such great epic, The Fall of Troy, Part 1. Before starting with the lesson, let's learn three important words which would help us understand the story more deeply. First, epic. A long poem, typically one derived from ancient oral tradition, narrating the deeds and adventures of heroic or legendary figures or the past history of a nation. Second, literature. Written works, especially those considered of superior or lasting artistic merit. Third, Trojan, relating to ancient Troy in Asia Minor. Today we shall learn one such epic of European literature in our lesson, The Fall of Troy, Part 1. Please turn to page 40. We shall read the first three paragraphs of the lesson. Epics are long poems that relate the deeds of a great national hero or a great national war. They often tell of a nation's early history. They may be composed and sung or recited for many years before they are actually written down. Two famous Sanskrit epics are the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. The two great epics of European literature, written in ancient Greek, are the Iliad and the Odyssey. Just as in Indian literature, we go back to the stories from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So, in the literature of Western countries, they go back to the Iliad and the Odyssey. Just as children all over India know the names of stories of Ram and Sita, Yudhishthira and Arjuna and Draupadi, so children in Western countries know the names of Hector and Odysseus and Achilles and Helen of Troy, the most beautiful woman in the world, because of whom the Greek and Trojans fought for 10 long years. Nobody knows for certain who the author of these early epics is. It is thought that they arose and developed with the nation itself, and were handed down from singer to singer till perhaps one great poet gave them the final form. It is believed that the Iliad and the Odyssey were composed and recited by a blind poet named Homer, who lived about 900 BCE and who wandered from one Greek city or village to another, singing his poems to all who would receive him in their homes and give him hospitality. This wandering singer has been honored through the ages, not only in Greece but in all Europe, as the father of European poetry. The Iliad is the story of Ilium or Troy, a rich trading city in Asia Minor near the narrow sea that leads from the Aegean to the Black Sea. It was well situated both for commerce and agriculture. In front of the city was the sea over which sailed the ships of Troy, carrying goods and grain, from which flowed many rivers and streams. The valleys among the hills were well watered and fertile, with corn growing in fertile fields and cattle feeding on the rich grass of the meadows, while sheep fed on the slopes of the hills. We see in these paragraphs the importance of geographical location is given. If you see the map, you can notice how rich and prosperous Troy was and surrounded by all the protection needed during the war. For years, there has been a debate if Troy ever happened or is just another myth told in oral literature. If you search for the archaeological evidences of Troy in YouTube, you will find many evidences about it, and it is very fascinating to see all those places. Round their city, the Trojans had built a strong wall so that no enemy should attack them from the sea. The wall was so broad that people could stand and sit and walk on it. The great gates stood open, and people could go to the seashore outside and come in as they pleased. But in time of war, the gates would be closed, and then the city was like a strong fortress, quite safe from all attack, protected by the walls surrounding it, as well as by the hills behind. Thus, Troy was a strong city, strongly protected by its walls and strongly defended by its brave soldiers. But all the kings and heroes of Greece had declared war against the Trojans. Because Paris, a prince of Troy, had persuaded Helen, wife of a Greek king, Menelaus, to elope with him. He had brought her to Troy. The Greeks wanted to take revenge on Troy for the wrong done to Menelaus. They sailed to Troy and laid siege to the city. The Trojans too fought hard, and the siege continued for 10 long years. Siege practically means enemy forces surrounding a town or building, cutting off essential supplies and compelling those inside to surrender. This is what happened during the Trojan War, a war due to revenge and an act of wrongdoing towards the king Menelaus, which resulted into this long war where we see one wrong decision made by the prince of a nation had huge consequences for both the kingdoms. The fighting went on daily, but the siege did not end. On the one hand, the Greeks could not take the city, and on the other hand, the Trojans could not force them to sail away. Every day, the Trojans came out of their tents, and the Greeks came out of their tents and ships, and the fighting went on. Sometimes there were great battles between the two armies. Though the real fight was between two royal families, the consequences were faced by many others who had nothing to do with this feud. Sometimes there were great single fights between two great heroes. Sometimes the Trojans had the better of it, and sometimes the Greeks. But still the fighting went on. Great heroes on both sides were killed in the course of the war. After leading the defense of his city for 9 years, the brave Hector was at last killed by Achilles, whom none could resist. But Achilles himself was killed later on by a poisoned arrow that entered his heel, the only part of his body where he could be wounded. Still later, Paris himself was killed, also by a poisoned arrow. The Trojans were tired of being shut up in their city, and the Greeks were longing to see their homes again. But still, the fighting went on. See Achilles being mentioned many times in this story. Achilles is known as one of the great heroes during this war. He is a very interesting character. There is a story why Achilles is such a great and brave hero. We'll see the backstory of this character. When Achilles was a baby, it was told that he would die young. To prevent his death, his mother, Thetis, took Achilles to the river Styx, which was supposed to offer powers of invulnerability, and dipped his body into the water. However, as Thetis held Achilles by the heel, his heel was not washed over by the water of the magical river. Achilles grew up to be a man of war who survived many great battles. Although the death of Achilles is predicted by Hector in Homer's Iliad, it does not actually occur in the Iliad. but is described in later Greek and Roman poetry and drama concerning events after the Iliad, later in the Trojan War. In the myth surrounding the war, Achilles was said to have died from a wound to his heel, which was the result of an arrow, possibly poisoned, shot by Paris, which we saw in our lesson. Classical myths attribute Achilles' invulnerability to his mother Thetis, having treated him with ambrosia and burned away his mortality in the hearth fire except on the heel, by which she held him. Peleus, his father, discovered the treatment and was alarmed to see Thetis holding the baby in the flames, which offended her and made her leave the treatment incomplete. According to a myth arising later, his mother had dipped the infant Achilles in the river Styx, holding on to him by his heel, and he became invulnerable. Where the waters touched him, that is, everywhere except the areas of his heel that were covered by her thumb and forefinger. Achilles being mentioned many times in this story. Achilles is known as one of the great heroes during this war. He is a very interesting character. There is a story why Achilles is such a great and brave hero. We'll see the backstory of this character. When Achilles was a baby, it was told that he would die young. To prevent his death, his mother, Thetis, took Achilles to the river Styx, which was supposed to offer powers of invulnerability, and dipped his body into the water. However, as Thetis held Achilles by the heel, his heel was not washed over by the water of the magical river. Achilles grew up to be a man of war who survived many great battles. Although the death of Achilles is predicted by Hector in Homer's Iliad, it does not actually occur in the Iliad, but is described in later Greek and Roman poetry and drama concerning events after the Iliad, later in the Trojan War. In the myth surrounding the war, Achilles was said to have died from a wound to his heel, which was the result of an arrow, possibly poisoned, shot by Paris, which we saw in our lesson. Classical myths attribute Achilles' invulnerability to his mother Thetis, having treated him with ambrosia and burned away his mortality in the hearth fire except on the heel, by which she held him. Peleus, his father, discovered the treatment and was alarmed to see Thetis holding the baby in the flames, which offended her and made her leave the treatment incomplete. According to a myth arising later, his mother had dipped the infant Achilles in the river Styx, holding on to him by his heel, and he became invulnerable. Where the waters touched him, that is, everywhere except the areas of his heel that were covered by her thumb and forefinger. Learned the first part of the fall of Troy. Moving on with the evaluation part, we'll start with answer the following. The first question is, which are the two famous Sanskrit epics mentioned? This was the base of our lesson we learned today. Moving on to the next question, second. In which language are the Iliad and the Odyssey written? This was also mentioned in the start of our lesson. Moving on to the third question, which are the famous European literature epics mentioned? This answer is the introduction of our lesson itself. Next question, who fought for 10 long years? This is the most important aspect of this lesson. The answer can be found in the first 3 paragraphs of the lesson. Question number 5. What was the cause of the 10-year-old war between the Greeks and the Trojans? This is the part of the story where we actually get to know why this great war happened. This answer can be found where the important characters of this lesson was introduced. Moving on in the evaluation part, question number 6. who were killed in the course of the war. This answer can be found after the main characters were introduced and the cause of the war was declared in the lesson. Our seventh question is a word that means a military operation in which enemy forces surround a town or building, cutting off essential supplies with the aim of compelling those inside to surrender. The answer is you have to mention a word which means the given sentences. Moving on to the next question, question number 8. Who composed the Iliad and the Odyssey? The answer for this question is the character who was introduced at the start of this lesson. Next question is how were the Trojans treated during war? Answer for this question can be found in the paragraphs where the geographical condition of Troy is given in a very detailed form. You will find the answer on to the next question, question number 10. A word that means traveling aimlessly from place to place. This word can be found where a person's reputation is mentioned. Next question is a personal response question. Do you think this war was necessary? What could have been done to avoid this war? You can answer this question with an yes or no at the start and the reason why you think so and how it could have been done. Let's move on to the next question, that is do as directed. This is basically grammar. So we'll start. The first question. This wandering singer has been honored through ages. Identify the tense. We can see the sentence is very much in present tense, but if you see the rules or remember the rules, sentence is identified as present perfect tense. Why? Because has been ordered gives us the reason to declare the sentence as present perfect tense. Moving on to the next question. Second, Mahabharata and Ramayana are famous epics used not only but also. This is a very easy and fun answer to be given. Not only Mahabharata but also Ramayana is a famous Sanskrit poem. It's very easy. You'll have to put the words in the sentence and test the sentence. On to the next question. Third one. Helen of Troy is the most beautiful woman in the world. Change to positive degree. Another fun question. We have learned the positive degree. Answer for this question is no other woman in the world is as beautiful as Helen of Troy. Always remember the positive, comparative and the superlative degrees which will help you in these questions. Next question, question number 4. The Trojans too fought hard and the siege continued for 10 years. Remove to. You have to remove the word to from the sentence without changing the meaning of the sentence. What are the words that you would use to keep the sentence meaning same but remove the word to from the sentence? The answer can be written as the Trojans also fought hard and the siege continued for 10 long years. In this answer, the answer is right, meaning is also not changed. Removing a word has not led to the change of the meaning of the whole sentence. Next question. Troy was a strong city. Make it negative. When such questions come, you have to change it into negative sentence but not change the meaning of the sentence. So what is the opposite word that will help you in gaining the answer of this sentence? Here, the speciality of this sentence is it says that this Troy is a very strong city. When you make it into a negative sentence, you have to see that the essence of the word strong is there but in a negative way. So the answer can be given as Troy was not a weak city, which means it was actually strong. But the answer is given in a negative way where not and a word weak is used. Our next question, question number 6 is the fighting went on daily, but the siege did not end. Change to a complex sentence. You don't have to change the meaning of the sentence, but you have to put a word which will make the sentence into a complex sentence. The answer is although the fighting went on daily, the siege did not end. As you can see, a word although is put in the sentence, but the meaning of the sentence is not changed, but it makes the sentence as a complex. On to the next question. Next question, question number 7. Give adjective form of safety and fertile. You have to remove the suffixes of the words. Safety becomes safe and fertile becomes fertile as your answer. Next question. Question number 8. Give the noun form of resist and daily. Resist becomes resistance and daily becomes day. The suffix is added and removed. Assignment. Find the story of why Helen was persuaded by the goddess Aphrodite to elope with Paris. Second, solve the questions on page 42 and 43 referring to the whole lesson that we just learned.